Geez, Leo, I've been up all night, and you're the one who fell asleep. What gives?
Oh, God, old Angus is so boring. I mean, I've never seen anybody with such a talent for maximizing the minuscule. I mean, who is it who said something about the elephant laboring mightily only to give birth to the mouse? And that's Angus.
That's not a very charitable assessment of his rhetorical skills. Actually, he's not that bad.
Oh, guess again.
On the other hand, you were horrible. Your mouth fell wide open at one point. You were snoring so loudly, I even thought he would notice.
No. Oh.
Sorry to cut in on your beauty sleep, Leo.
Well.
Next time, I'll try to be a little more entertaining.
You got me flat-footed. I'm completely defenseless.
Keep it up, and you're going to be completely jobless, too.
On the surface, this might look like a bit of risky behavior on the part of Leo, our resident, attributable perhaps to the less than sterling pedagogical skills of Alan Angus are attending. But let us now, once and forever, recognize that while a boring event may unmask sleepiness, it will not cause it. Neither will warm rooms, for that matter. The same goes for any of the other stuff that makes up the prevailing folklore about sleepiness. Simply stated, sleepiness is due to lack of sleep. Keeping that in mind, let's see how our attending might better balance Leo's need to pay attention in educational settings with Leo's need to maintain well-being, his own safety, and that of his patients.
Keep it up, and you'll be completely jobless, too. How about sleepless? Have you been getting enough sleep? Were you on call last night?
No. I was on night float last week, but that ended Friday. Today's Monday, so...
You've been getting sleep over the weekends?
No, of course not.
You'd feel better if you had, Leo. What do you know about sleep debt?
Sleep debt? Come on, do I have to worry about that too now? I mean, school loans debt, I know completely about that, but sleep debt?
Stop being a smarty. Go refresh your memory about sleep debt and how it works. I've got a great tape from the AAMC I'd like you to look at.
Okay.
I'm serious. Start working on a little prevention here. Let's get proactive.
Okay.
Tell you what. You work on understanding a little more about sleep and how it works, and I'll work on my lecture skills.
Hey.
Sounds good to me.
All right, you got a deal.
Long work hours and on-call duties were ordeals that medical residents had to endure. Now, however, the implications of sleep loss on resident well-being and patient safety are beginning to be recognized. In response, the medical educational system is changing. In July 2003, the ACGME mandated duty hours for all residents, all specialties, and all locations. This mandate recognizes that sufficient sleep and good sleep hygiene are critical for the practice of good medicine. Both are good for patient safety.
It is important to understand, however, that restricting the work hours alone will not do away with fatigue.
Compliance to the hours doesn't ensure that fatigue will go away, so it is important for program directors to have systems in place for discussing or evaluating the fatigue level of residents. On the other hand, these things can't be overly burdensome, so it's the responsibility of both the resident and the residency director to have a system in place that they can quickly and efficiently have a candid conversation about the ability of the resident to function relative to fatigue or any other potentially impairing condition. So as a result, I think this comes down to a culture of shared responsibility.
This program has been designed to help you identify the risk and impact of sleep loss on residents, and help your program and your residents adopt strategies to manage the effects of sleepiness and fatigue.
It is well known that sleep deprivation and disruption of the normal sleep pattern can severely impair function. In humans, sleep is regulated by the circadian rhythm and homeostatic sleep drive. Circadian rhythm, which determines the daily sleep-wake distribution, causes us to feel sleepy at night and wakeful during the day. Sleep is regulated homeostatically. The sleep drive accumulates during waking hours and decreases during the period of sleep. Humans on average require approximately 8 hours of sleep every 24 hours to satisfy their physiological needs. Commonly, when people get less than 5 hours of sleep over a 24-hour period, their peak mental performance begins to deteriorate. In a medical setting, this can have serious consequences.
Baldwin and Doherty surveyed 3,604 residents. A little more than 20% of all residents reported averaging about 5 hours or less sleep per night, with 66% averaging 6 hours or less per night. Residents averaging 5 or fewer hours of sleep per night were more likely to report serious accidents or injuries, conflict with other professional staff, use of alcohol, use of medication to stay awake, noticeable weight change, working in an impaired condition. They were also more likely to report making significant medical errors.
Longer periods of enforced wakefulness are associated with even greater deterioration in cognitive function. After one night of no sleep, baseline cognitive performance in residents may decrease as much as 25%. Subsequent to missing a second night of sleep, baseline performance may decline as much as 40%. Studies using the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, an assessment tool widely used by sleep professionals, evaluated the effects of sleep deprivation on residents. One study found that sleep-deprived residents score about the same on this scale as people with diagnosed sleep disorders.
149 residents at 5 U.S. academic health centers in 6 specialties were recruited for the study. They described multiple adverse effects of sleep loss and fatigue on learning, job performance, and professionalism. Only 16% scored within the normal range on ESS. 84% scored within the range, indicating a need for clinical intervention.
Sleep is not optional, but a real physiological need. Without the necessary amount, a person cannot function appropriately.
I always thought I was one of those people who just needed a couple hours of sleep a night, that I could learn to do with even less. I guess it was a macho thing, I need less sleep than you do, and that's because you're a wimp. On the other hand, there are times where I'm just so tired. It starts to feel like that my patients are my enemies. And they're the only thing that stands between me and my Z's. Do you ever feel like that?
All members of the healthcare team, and this includes faculty, need to understand the importance of sleep and sleep time and accept the limitations on the roles residents will play under these new duty hours. It is also critical that everyone involved recognize the signs and symptoms of fatigue, especially those that are nonspecific. The major signs include altered mood, apathy, impaired memory, inflexible thinking, nodding off during conferences, making errors, and microsleeps. Microsleeps, or moments in which individuals fall asleep for a period of seconds, are particularly dangerous. While very brief in duration, they include enough time to allow for missing an assignment, failing to check on a lab test, or running off the road while driving home. Other signs of fatigue include the need to check work repeatedly and difficulty focusing on tasks such as documentation, writing orders, and so forth.
Yep, that's me. All of the above. All kidding aside, I've been reading a lot about those studies of the effects of fatigue on docs. I've got to say it's changed my mind about a lot of things. I used to think that my education would suffer if I didn't have all that stress or exposure and continuity. Maybe it's not just about me. Maybe it's about patients too, and maybe their safety should override everything. Just a thought. All these maybes. Maybe I do have a responsibility to get enough sleep at night. Maybe I should live closer to the hospital so I don't have such a far commute post-call. Maybe all that extra moonlighting isn't such a great idea. Well, maybe.
Excessive sleepiness in a resident should be treated as a performance issue and calls for an evaluation. Performance issues are discussed in greater detail in the life segment, Impairments. Like any other individuals, residents may have conditions that have sleepiness as a symptom. It could, for example, result from a medical condition such as hypothyroidism or a psychological disorder such as depression. It could also occur as a side effect of a medication such as a beta blocker or even result from a primary sleep disorder.
As with other performance issues, I believe it is not your role to evaluate or diagnose a problem, but rather to identify it, and then to make sure the resident is referred to an appropriate source, such as your own employee health service.
Fatigue as a normal response to enforced wakefulness cannot be eliminated from medical residencies, but it can be managed more efficiently. We can begin by recognizing that sometimes program solutions can cause as many problems as they are designed to solve. For example, night float systems, or for that matter, any nighttime duty, is associated with greater risks for patient safety. Night float exposes a resident to all the risks associated with fatigue.
Night shift work is among the more challenging components of any 24/7 industry. And for most people, it leads to a difficulty sleeping during the daytime, during the wake phase of the circadian cycle, and a difficulty being alert during the night or dark phase of the circadian cycle. And as a result, if that happens repeatedly across days, they develop cumulative sleep debts. Now, in the face of that, how do you ensure that you get some sleep during the day and have optimal alertness at night? That often means, in addition to trying to get adequate sleep in a dark, quiet environment, that you have judicious use of caffeine if you are someone who does and can consume caffeine. You use it only for the night shift. Drink it, I like to say, drink it pharmacologically, not sociologically, and which is to say, stay off of it when you don't need it and drink it when you do need it. And then be mindful of the fact that there's no real adjustment possible to the night shift when the shifts are sporadic and variable over time, and most people can't make a full biological adjustment, and as a result, it really is a period of time when countermeasures are a critical part of continuing to ensure that you're alert.
Despite the fact that there are numerous ways of scheduling night shifts, no one formula appears to work better than any other. Studies have shown that a large majority of workers, up to 95%, are unable to adjust regardless of the division in hours. However, prophylactic naps taken before the shift begins may be of some help. ER residents who took a 1-hour nap prior to their night duty showed enhanced awake activity as documented by ECGs, reported experiencing less stress, and felt their workload was less burdensome. Still, these shifts can be difficult to deal with in terms of fatigue management.
In light of that and the fact that the night shift also means that you don't sleep as much during the daytime, then you're looking at a cumulative sleep debt the more days you do it. The net result is that it's probably better to be exposed to the night shift for 1 or 2 days and then be off of it again before you're re-exposed to it. And there are systems like that are very popular in Europe, called continental shifts, where you only work 1 or 2 or 3 nights on the night shift, often 1 or 2, and then rotate back on the day. But usually a shorter period of time on the night shift is better. But what that means is you need to sleep prophylactically the day before you rotate onto the night shift. So if your night shift is going to be on a Monday night and you slept Sunday night, Monday during the day you should still try and take a nap, mid to late afternoon if possible. And if you can't do it then, do it early afternoon or even late morning. But additional sleep will help prophylactically deal with some of the loss of alertness on the night shift. And then again, the potential use of caffeine can be helpful.
Caffeine takes approximately 30 minutes for the effects to be felt, and they last about 3 or 4 hours. The downside of the stimulant is that tolerance may develop, and because it is both a stimulant and a diuretic, it may interfere with subsequent sleep opportunities. Alcohol should be avoided because of its rebound effect. Napping when possible during on-call hours is also helpful in ameliorating the effects of fatigue. Timing can also be critical.
the question of when to nap, say in a 30-hour period of wakefulness that starts one morning, the answer is there are a couple dimensions to the answer. The first is nap prophylactically. That is, take sleep when you can obtain sleep. Even in advance of being tired and the sleep deprivation, banking some sleep seems to help with your ability to cope with subsequent increased pressure for sleep, subsequent night work, and being awake. So certainly try to get a nap in the afternoon if you can, during the siesta period, which is as much biology as it is culture. Most of us have an inherent ability to fall asleep in the middle of the afternoon, and many people think it's associated with the noontime meal, but not entirely. So that would be a very good time to take it. And you could get up to an hour or two during that period, but even 20 minutes can be very helpful during that period. Then the second period for trying to capitalize on sleep is during what would be your habitual nocturnal sleep period, in the night. Naps at that time can be quite beneficial. The problem is you will wake up with a severe sleep inertia.
Sleep inertia is a phenomenon characterized by impaired cognition, severe disorientation, transitory hypovigilance, confusion, and difficulty in fully awakening. It occurs when a person abruptly emerges from delta or stage 4 sleep, the deepest and most restorative sleep stage, and typically lasts about 30 minutes. Residents who manage to reach this stage are particularly vulnerable because they are often awakened by phone calls or pages, the need to follow up on patients, the need to manage junior-level residents, or even by other residents who share the call room. Most of us recognize the grogginess and disorientation that constitutes the subjective part of sleep inertia, but many people overestimate their ability to function in this state.
You should not trust yourself during sleep inertia and presume that you will function in a coherent, logical manner. Some of the most severe cognitive deficits we have ever seen in experimentally sleep-deprived subjects came when they took naps and had sleep inertia upon abrupt awakening from the naps after a period of sleep deprivation. So it's very important not to trust your cognition then. Short of a dire emergency where you must do something, it would be better to allow yourself 15 minutes to counter sleep inertia.
The length of the nap plays a determining role in precipitating sleep inertia.
Naps that get up to 40, 50, 60 minutes long will have more slow-wave sleep in them. And what that means is there'll be more sleep inertia because sleep inertia is directly associated with the depth of sleep, the intensity of sleep as measured by slow-wave activity in the EEG.
Sleep inertia can be reversed with countermeasures.
Get vertical, turn the lights on, get physically active. You can even shower. Things like that tend to reverse sleep inertia. It can take 20 or 30 minutes to completely reverse it. Once you do reverse it, though, you actually get the benefit of the sleep for hours afterwards on the positive side. So don't avoid naps in the middle of the night because of sleep inertia. Do counter the sleep inertia with active metabolic activities, and caffeine can help there. And then make sure that your nap planning allows for some minutes to recover from the sleep inertia.
Pre-shift and on-the-job naps may also help to reduce sleep debt, which is defined as the difference between the hours of sleep a person needs and the hours of sleep a person actually gets. Sleep debts are associated with slower response times, forgetfulness, confusion, depression, lack of motivation, and decreased morale and initiative. As well, any awareness of being sleepy is blunted. The worst time to take a nap is between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. However, napping at any time is better than no nap at all. While pre-shift and on-the-job naps can help manage fatigue, they cannot take the place of time off, which is so necessary to recuperate fully from the effects of enforced wakefulness.
The reality is that there is some evidence in the last 3 years in the sleep field to suggest that there needs to be more than one day off. And that ideally you want 2 sleep periods. It's not the days off, it's the number of nocturnal sleep periods. And 2 nocturnal sleep periods appears to be vastly better than 1. And as a result, it looks like in an ideal world you'd like to be able to give people 36 or 48 hours off before you rotated them back, and making certain that that includes 2 nocturnal sleep opportunities. Having said that, I also want to say that, again, young adults can often, if the sleep pressure is very high, sleep 9, 10, 11 hours, and that seems to afford a good deal of recovery. One study we recently completed in our laboratory compared the effects of 88 hours without any sleep, 4 days, and we allowed people either 2 nights of 7 hours sleep or 1 night of 14. And the 1 night of 14 produced a daytime performance level equivalent to 2 nights at 7. And so getting longer sleep on a single night seems to provide some compensation relative to getting 2 nights of sleep. But again, it is critical that residents use that day off to try to catch up on sleep, keeping in mind that there are a lot of competing forces for their time, quite understandably, family and physical, economic, business things they have to do, domestic responsibilities, etc.
Residents need to be reminded that free time is, as they say, free time. Time off should be used responsibly, and that means used to reduce sleep debt. Managing fatigue is a partnership. The most resident-friendly programs will do their part by reducing non-essential, non-learning tasks and make sure that other members of the healthcare team, such as nurses, try to decrease or eliminate inessential calls. In this context, residents should evaluate the need to moonlight very carefully. Although hours spent earning extra income need not be counted as part of the weekly duty hours, residents need to understand that hours spent moonlighting can add to their sleep debt or keep them from working it off. It is well known that the level of indebtedness can be staggering for a young physician. This makes moonlighting and the money that can be made quite seductive. But there are other options for debt management, and residents should be familiar with them. These are discussed more fully in the Life segment on burnout and career crisis.
Teaching residents to manage fatigue gets us into some issues that traditionally have not been part of educational content of our residency programs. Safety is a case in point. We now help our residents think about where to live vis-a-vis the hospital in order to minimize the drive home post-call or access public transportation or taxis.
Driving when sleep-deprived is dangerous and should be avoided. Very little except pulling the car over and taking a nap can help with fatigue. Signs indicative of danger include closing the eyes at traffic lights, failure to remember driving, continuous yawning, and drifting from one lane to the other. None of the old tricks such as chewing gum, playing loud radio music, or opening a window work. Napping before leaving the hospital after a night shift or taking a taxi or using other modes of public transportation should be considered. In some states, residents who drive after a 24-hour shift and are involved in motor vehicle collisions are liable for criminal prosecution. For example, Maggie's Law, enacted by the state of New Jersey in 2003. Fatigue and sleep deprivation during residencies will never be totally eliminated, even with the new GME standards. The best that can be done is to manage it as effectively as possible. The main point is to recognize its serious effects and take steps to reduce any potential for adverse outcomes.